Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the show.
You meet someone online and there's this instant connection. It's amazing how much the two of you just seem to click. They live somewhere far away and there's some plausible reason they can't travel to meet you. They tell you they're in love with you and you feel optimistic for the first time in a long time. They have a successful career, yet somehow they need money from you to solve a short-term problem, always with the promise of paying you back. Time goes on and they need more money more urgently. You've started to see the cracks and begin to wonder whether they've been lying this whole time. All of a sudden it hits you. You've been scammed. Fool Me Twice is the story of my mother, Jules Hannaford, a woman who was drawn into the dangerous world of sweetheart scams. After a trip overseas to meet a stranger, a dangerous altercation in a Manchester hotel room, and thousands of pounds lost for good, she's here to tell her story. Fool Me Twice, a true crime podcast, is available on Apple Podcasts, Ozcast Network, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Today I'm here with Tamar Heller. Hi Tamar, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jules.
Tamar, you are up in Shanghai and I wonder how you ended up there. How did you become a Shanghaian? Is that a word?
Well, it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely an adopted Shanghaier. So I'm from California. I'm from Silicon Valley. And I have a background in education and publishing, but also I've always been involved in entrepreneurship. So a business opportunity brought me here when I was miserable in California and looking for a big change. LinkedIn is the thing that connected me to coming here and taking a chance on a startup. And now I'm the COO of a digital marketing agency, the leading one for LinkedIn services with my business partner. And we're trying to create our happily ever after business story. So that's what brought me to Shanghai.
Oh, fantastic. How long have you been there?
I'm entering my 5th year now.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
And what were you doing in education and publishing in California before you came to Shanghai?
I was in secondary education, but I've taught all kinds of ranges, ages 2 to 65, many different subjects. But I specialized actually in teaching philosophy and world religion classes. But I also was teaching British literature, English literature, teaching students how to write well. And from that, I got into publishing. I've written and published 3 books of my own.
Oh my God, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I also used to work with, when I went more into publishing side, had my own publishing firm and worked with other firms. In the US, I was working with celebrities and former athletes and former Olympians and Grammy-winning producers to help write their biographies. So yeah, that was quite a time in my life.
Wow, that's amazing. So you left all of that to come to Shanghai and work in a completely different field, really. That's quite amazing.
The culture of California just wasn't for me anymore, as much as I love California. So culturally, mindset-wise, I was ready for a change, and that's why I left.
What do you love about Chinese culture and being in Shanghai?
I really love how open the Chinese are for business. I've never had this many business or networking opportunities in my life. I think especially the Chinese, they're so curious and they're keen to try something. They don't overthink things, whereas in the West, I think a lot of us tend to be too apprehensive or too skeptical. So for example, like if you find someone, a Chinese local on LinkedIn, and you just add them to your WeChat or texting platform, it's not a big deal. They don't think it's weird. You just say, hi, so-and-so, I found you on LinkedIn. I think your business is interesting. I'd like to talk about maybe a collaboration. They're very keen. They're very open, and you can schedule like a coffee date with them the next day. Whereas in the US, people will say, who are you?
Yeah, you're a stalker. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I love the most.
Yeah, that's so interesting. There's an element of people wanting to take risks, isn't there, in business in China, which is really great. And I think that whole face thing and connection and all of that plays into it, doesn't it? People don't want to offend, and so they're more willing to sort of connect with you, aren't they? Which is great.
Yeah, I think so. And like, I think, there's this idea of guangxi, keeping the relationship, building a relationship, harmony. But even within that, you can only go so deep, especially as a foreigner. So I think there's an interesting dichotomy at play there. And like you said, they don't really want to offend, so they'll try it, but doesn't mean it's going to be successful. It really is about strengthening the relationship and finding what works best for you and for them.
How did you become the COO of Genius Sensor Agency?
I met my business partner, Julian, through LinkedIn. And at the time, like, he was getting ready to launch here in China. He had this China dream. I never had a China dream, but he did. And he was the number one influencer for LinkedIn in France for a French-speaking audience. So that definitely like piqued my curiosity. And when we got in touch and contact, we found that we had super complementary skill sets and decided to give it a go. And then while we've been building the business as well, a few years ago, we started a community together in Shanghai, LinkedIn Local Shanghai, which is the most active professional community in Shanghai of LinkedIn lovers. I think it was more of like a gut feel and a trust to try it out. And here we are several years later.
So you guys just really started it together, and your goal was to connect people in business? Was that your goal of the agency?
Our goal was to provide lead generation services and inbound marketing services, because he really had a vision that LinkedIn was starting to gain huge traction in the West, especially in the US and also in Europe. But in the APAC region, it was still really undeveloped. And LinkedIn is the only social media platform from the West available in China. So he saw this huge opportunity, because at first he was kind of playing around in the e-commerce arena, but then he saw this opportunity for LinkedIn, and he already was a LinkedIn influencer and decided, okay, let's give this a shot. And I really admired that ambition, that dream, and I saw the need as well. And we were right. We were right. There's a huge need, and it's still growing and developing here.
That's amazing. So Julian was on my podcast about a month ago. So if anyone wants to go and check out, it's called something LinkedIn, learning about LinkedIn, something like that. My listeners can go and listen to that and hear all about how beneficial LinkedIn can be for finding jobs, creating content, connecting in business, all of that sort of thing. It was actually really fascinating. And what I really didn't realize was how huge LinkedIn is in the job market and connecting professionals. So it really is going to almost be the leading platform for people to find jobs in the future, isn't it? Did you know this before you got involved with LinkedIn? Did you know how powerful it was?
I was starting to understand, but not really. And I had someone who had been helping me while I was working in digital publishing. He was like our consultant. So he taught me a lot about LinkedIn, which is what attracted me to this opportunity anyways. So I started experimenting on my own. I did ads, I did articles, I did groups, I did private messaging, content, you name it, I tried it. And that experimenting with all those things and really becoming a practitioner, that's what made me realize, wow, I think this could be really huge. And I'm glad I was right, because now, especially in 2020, LinkedIn has become so super powerful. They just changed the design. The user experience is improved. It's almost like Facebook in 2012, where the organic reach is still quite high. And I think now is the time to take advantage of that, because as it becomes oversaturated in a few years, it's going to become again like Facebook, where you have to pay more to really get a reach.
Yeah, you do have to pay to get a reach on Facebook. And I'm fascinated just to see the reach that my posts have on my podcast and the different sort of areas of interest depending on the story and what's going on in the podcast. It's quite fascinating. Actually, I've got a personal question. Can I ask you?
Please.
So I've got a pitch document for my podcast, which it fooled me twice, which is about how I was scammed in online dating. And I've got a pitch doc to turn it into a TV series. I just can't get my foot in the door with any creators or networks like Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or any of those. And it's just occurred to me that maybe LinkedIn would be the way forward. That could be the way to actually get the connections, couldn't it? So what advice would you have for me to make that happen?
Okay, it's similar to like if you're writing a book and you want to pitch it to a literary agent or even to an editor who's taking submissions. You always need to do a little bit of background research or homework on that person, see the kind of things that they're accepting. So it could be like a producer, it could be an agent, who specializes in that. So like really build kind of a lead list, I would say a target list, research what they're about to make sure what you're pitching is what they're looking for. Make sure they're open to submissions, and then reach out with a personalized message on LinkedIn. Like tell them exactly why you're reaching out. For me, I've gotten in touch with decision-making high executives just because of doing my due diligence. That's how I started to create a relationship with the CEO of LinkedIn China, who I just got to meet with last month, which was really incredible.
Wow.
And be recognized for my work. But I saw that he lived in my hometown in Silicon Valley for 15 or 16 years as a data scientist for Apple. So I was able to find something that could connect us and create rapport. And he personally answered me. This is over a year ago. And then he was following mine and Julian's work, and we got a personal invitation. And yeah, like we know all the big people at LinkedIn China as well too, like, which again is very unique to China. They're way more open to having like a good relationship with people in China than Western side LinkedIn. So it goes to show you, like, if you've done your due diligence, you can get a response for sure.
Wow, that's amazing advice. I'm so impressed with what you've been able to achieve. So is that something that I could hire you to do for me? I could hire you to help me with that task. Is that the sort of thing that you might do?
We do lead generation. So it's basically prospecting. So for clients, when we do that, it's building a lead list. We verify or validate it with them. And then we run their account for them. Like it's complete and pure delegation. We craft a series of messages to get in front of your ideal target. We call it a nurturing sequence. That way we start to build a real relationship with them rather than just, this is what I want, give it to me.
Right. Okay. We're going to have to talk turkey after this. I think we might be able to strike up a business relationship here as well, Tamar. That's so cool. Sure. I think also for me, I don't have the time really because I'm a full-time teacher and I have another podcast. So I don't really have the time to put into it. So having somebody like you to support me and do it for me or with me would be amazing. What a great service that you offer. That's so cool. You. So this has all just come to me through our conversation already. So that's amazing. What other roles do you have in your company? So you do this lead generation kind of thing. What other stuff do you do?
So we also do advertising, and then we do content creation, which relates to inbound marketing. It relates to positioning people as thought leaders or as influencers in their industry, which is definitely appealing to a lot of people these days. But it's more so about LinkedIn is human to human, H to H, not B to B. It's about creating a connection. And when you as an individual can really highlight and share your expertise, then people want to know more about your company, your service, your product, your offering. And so that's what we really help people to do because, similar to you, like they're super busy. They're money rich and time poor. And if they want to really see a big impact, they must delegate. So for me, actually, like because of my background as a copywriter, an editor, a former publisher, I'm the one who really guides and drives like most of the content side, our content team. And I also like the head, I guess, of client relations. So I'm driving the team in that as well. And then Julian, my business partner, he does a lot of more like the internal stuff, the processes, setting up the team, the business development. So like I said, we have a super complementary role, but it all works together holistically for the main things that we offer at our company.
Wow, how cool. And you work sometimes with Fortune 500 companies to generate leads. How do you get such big clients?
Sometimes it's actually just inbound marketing. It's because we've positioned ourselves as experts, especially here in APAC, but now we're working more with global companies. And then other times it's direct prospecting. It's really, okay, who do we want to work with? And we can do a complete assessment or audit of their current campaign, show them like where the weak points are, etc., get them into a call, and then go from there. Some of these companies, they're incredible, but they don't even have a LinkedIn strategy. And we show them why it's important, especially this year, to shift or to expand into LinkedIn, because now other platforms, there's so many different things on them and they're just not getting the reach that they used to. There's been a lot of changes, especially like when Instagram, for example, started taking away like the number of likes that people can see. Okay, maybe it's good like psychologically for individuals, but for businesses, it's not that great. There is something to be said for showing those kind of numbers, the views, etc. And LinkedIn shows that to give a social proof for the business. So I think businesses will be smarter to do like imaging and videos more so on LinkedIn moving forward than other platforms.
What's the difference in a strategy that you might suggest for an individual on LinkedIn compared to a company on LinkedIn? Or is there any difference in strategy and lead generation and things like that?
It's mostly the same. It's just working with a Fortune 500. You're working with a lot more team members than like one or two smaller companies. And that means that the process takes a little bit longer for validation. That means there's sometimes a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and you have to strike a balance between pleasing, but also reminding, look, we're your collaborators, we're your partner, and we need you to trust that we're going to guide you in the right direction.
And do you tailor make your program or your support depending on what the person needs? Like, could it be a one-off short-term job, or do people have to sign on with you for 6 months or a year? Are you able to sort of design how you support people?
We do design, but minimum is 6 months because the algorithm changes about every 3 months. It's just not worth it. Like we've tried in the past before to do like short campaigns or quick win campaigns. It's not worth it. You don't get the best return on investment. So we sign for 6 months, ideally a year, 12 months. That's when the client is really going to get a lot of results. Sometimes we'll do things like employee branding, where we do a monthly training for their employees, how to use LinkedIn. So after the contract, they can be more self-sustaining and maybe they only delegate like their content to us. We also have done things like created lead magnets for our clients, like a webinar. We've helped to create an integrated booking system so that everything's automated for them. And the call to action in their post or in their messages is for people to book a call with them. And we track everything. Like we are always tracking so we can shift and pivot and redesign as needed.
That's so interesting. Would my task, which would be getting a pitch deck onto the table in front of content creators at networks, would that be something that you do, or is that very different to what you actually do?
That would probably be different because it's like super
it's very niche
and like a smaller thing. Yeah. So we used to like sell courses showing people how to do that on their own, or we recommend people to go to, we do have a webinar that runs every 2 weeks called the LinkedIn Masterclass, where we can show people how to properly set things up, how to basically put yourself on your own system so that even with limited time, as long as you plan ahead, like a few hours, let's say a month, you can kind of like automate the task a little bit or at least make it really efficient.
Yeah, that's such a cool idea. I'm going to have to check that out. Are they still available or is that something that you finished?
Yeah, no, our next webinar will be in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, great. I'll definitely have to sign up for that for sure.
Yes, definitely.
How valuable do you think LinkedIn is a tool for connection, not only business and not only career or employment, but what about personal connections and especially during COVID when people are so isolated?
That's what our LinkedIn local Shanghai community is all about. It's really about connecting professionals with the first idea of getting to know the person behind the profile. That's what the community stands for. But beyond that, of course, secondary, tertiary, there's going to be business opportunities or collaboration opportunities. And what we found was because we had such a strong ending to our community events last year, and because we utilize WeChat groups to keep the community all together and interacting, etc., supporting each other, we really had to rely on a digital infrastructure like WeChat to keep in touch. And what was really interesting for Julian and I to see is that, especially during the quarantine time, content and posting and visibility on LinkedIn skyrocketed because everyone was home and they finally started to try their hand at posting. But those who didn't have a plan and planned ahead and they just kind of were doing it here and there, those are the ones who fell off the radar after a few weeks. They lost interest or they got busy again, whatever. But then we also saw people in our community who really listened to what we were teaching, created a content strategy and editorial calendar, started planning their content ahead. And from the COVID time, they became super active and consistent and started becoming thought leaders within their own niche. So that was really cool to see as far as community connecting. And honestly, if we didn't have a platform like LinkedIn, I don't know what the real incentive would be for people to take that kind of massive action.
What are some of the key reasons that people might pick up one of your programs to become thought leaders? Is it content created? Is it connections? Or I guess it's all of that and more.
Yes, exactly.
What are some other reasons?
I think people want to know how to use LinkedIn properly. It's a tool, but like any tool, if you don't know how to use it correctly, you're not going to get the results that you want. And like I said, it's like most people who are just kind of amateur users of social media, they're the ones who are posting their breakfast every day, and it's not interesting or valuable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
that's
my father
such an
does
Instagram thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, my father does it on Facebook. God bless him. But I'm like, no one cares that you had toast and bacon again today. And I think that can drive people more into vanity metrics, comparing themselves, seeing how many likes they got just so they can feel good about themselves and get this kind of quick high. And actually, the problem from a psychological point of view, from a neuroscience point of view, a brain perspective, what that does is that creates dopamine, which is more of like the quick fix kind of chemicals in our brains rather than endorphins, which are more long lasting. So the dopamine is great at a time. Like, it's like when you eat a piece of chocolate, you get the pleasure, but you don't keep dreaming about that chocolate for years to come. Whereas something that is really, truly satisfying, something that you worked hard for, that produces endorphins, same like exercise. So people get so hooked on this dopamine causing interactions, comments, likes, that they think that's what social media is about. But, for LinkedIn especially, like it's a tool and it's a professional tool and it should be used differently. And people should learn how to use it because it will get them some pretty phenomenal results if they can step away from, oh, how many likes did I get? How many comments? And instead focus first on what value am I giving to my audience? What stories am I telling that's going to make their lives better or solve a problem or give an insight into something that they may be struggling with? So that's really, what LinkedIn is for and why it's so powerful. And I think sometimes people forget that.
I love that term, vanity metrics. I haven't heard that before. That's very cool. How can people avoid getting caught up in that kind of thing in LinkedIn and remember that it is a tool and there's a way to use it properly and it's not really about the number of likes?
First, think long term. So again, if you're thinking about the number of likes, you're a short-term thinker. Think about the long term. What's the overall arching goal? Is it to sell your product, sell your service, create collaborations, move people, influence them? What is it? Second is going to be plan ahead. So that means creating an editorial calendar that really connects everything, really has content that's going to achieve this goal. And then the third is consistency. So with planning and then the execution, be super consistent, because then again, you understand it's like this long-term journey, this goal, and you don't need to be excited that you got 100 likes just for one post and then the next day you got 2, so you're disappointed. No, it's like really understanding it's a process, going to take a while, and then you don't get so caught up. But people who are doing things at the last minute, by the seat of their pants, not really offering value and trying to say how amazing they are, or even just like, not to offend anyone, but I don't want to hear about who you caught up with the other day, unless it was your mentor from Apple who helped you turn over $1 million this year. Seriously, like, I don't want to hear who you had coffee with, even though it's professional. You know, people try to position it like that. Like, where's the value? There's none. That's a vanity metric. And they think that they're giving value, but they don't take a step back and see they're just talking about themselves. So
yeah, it's hard to find that balance of adding value rather than promoting yourself and promoting your product, but not doing in a way that you seem like you're lacking humility. It's really interesting, isn't it? And I guess that's something that you help people to find that balance.
right. One of our most recent campaigns with a Fortune 500 was they had a product that they were pitching to really big mobile phone companies on the APAC side. And like, the challenge was, how do you humanize like a product or a need? How do you explain what consumers want according to your data? How do you make a product sexy that's not? So it's always through storytelling and highlighting, but we were also highlighting like how amazing their company is, because they're really an amazing company. Like, they just won an award actually for like best places to work. And we put a little bit of boasting in there because it was well deserved. And yet the way that we did it was weaving a story, was educating the audience about this particular product and what consumers said, asking questions, asking people's opinions. So again, like, it's really about connecting with the audience. It's like, people who are listening know who Sam Horn is. She's like super, super influential in the presentation and influencing sphere. And she says that when you want to create a connection with an audience, even if you tell a story about yourself, you need to then ask them a question that creates empathy. So for example, if I tell you a story about like my hardship, I won't just end it with like, yeah, and then I overcame challenges and that's it, and everyone claps. No, like, then to create the connection, you ask the audience, have you ever experienced a hard time when you couldn't make a decision for X, Y, and Z? What would you do? What did you do? So
wow,
then
that's a great tip.
The connection. And it's just a simple question, and people can put it in their post. So that's what, again, like, we help our clients do in their content strategy. Otherwise, again, I don't care that you had coffee with your former mentor. You didn't ask me about me. You just told me about yourself. So that's where people need to recognize the difference.
So if I was to sign up with you for a 6-month package, would you go through my LinkedIn and have a look at all of it and then start by giving me feedback on how I need to make changes and what I'm not doing well? And maybe even like a little tip on something I'm doing well to make me feel good.
Yeah. Well, so what we've done is we changed our process. We have found it's best to, before we even assess anything for anyone, we have them fill out a type form. It's called our collaboration form. So we can get an idea of what people really want. We are very specific. So we want to work with very specific people. Of course, we can guide, etc., but we want to know the budget. We want to know your objective. We want to know what kind of position you want to be known for, or what kind of thought leader you want to be. We want to know if you have a lead magnet or if you want us to help you create one, those kind of things. Then when we go through that, we see if this potential client is someone that we really believe we could add value to. If we believe we can add value to them, then we invite them to a consulting call, go over the questions, etc. And then from there, if they're like, yes, I'm on board, we create a proposal, invite them to a second call to go over the proposal. And that's where we present. Okay, like you've done this content before, we recommend this. Or, the content you already have is good, let's amplify it to this. You're not targeting correctly, let's try it this way. You don't have a lead magnet, let's create this for you. Let's implement a video strategy, etc. And then we go from there. So like one of our clients, actually, they just re-signed with us. What we did was we knew that the content strategy was okay, but we advised you need to shift it to this to be a little more specific. And now that's producing so much better results. That's again, like why we work with people more long-term. And then we started to upgrade them to more video content. So that's been really interesting as well to try, because LinkedIn now is bringing back more video content, and it was gone for a while. The reach was really low. So those are the kind of things too. Like we're not just looking at what, you're doing. We're also looking at what LinkedIn is really boosting and making visible. That way we can again get the highest return on investment for your project, your campaign.
Can you explain to me what a lead magnet is?
Yeah, a lead magnet is basically something to entice people to at least take a look at your offer. For example, a lead magnet could be a free ebook people download, but in exchange, they have to give you their email so you can build your email list. A lead magnet could be a webinar. So for Julian and myself, for our business, one of our lead magnets is a webinar. And in a webinar, it's really great because you can just for 1 hour show people your expertise, and you create a real great like online rapport, which is hard to do if you're just sending someone an ebook. You really demonstrate that you're a practitioner, and then you start to create trust. And then if people are like, yes, I want to delegate, I want those services, then we invite them to our collaboration forum. Another lead magnet could be something like a free course, a free online course. It could be like also one free chapter of a book. So anything that's going to entice people to at least listen to what you have to say, that's what we call a lead magnet. And it's the very beginning of getting someone into your sales funnel.
And do you work with individuals? It kind of sounds like you work mostly with companies.
We do, but it's individuals who are CEOs of like maybe small to medium enterprises. Maybe they don't have like a marketing team in place. So what we do is we become their marketing team. That way they can focus more on business development. And of course, they also have a desire and goal to be positioned as thought leaders, as experts. They just don't have the time. They're too busy, or they don't know where to start. So that's more of an individual level.
Yeah. All right. That sounds so interesting. Are you also the co-president of LinkedIn Asia?
LinkedIn Local Asia. So that's our community for Shanghai.
So that's the one in Shanghai. Okay.
Yeah. And it's spread out to Asia. We've had some people before like ask us to help them set up communities, etc. So Julian and I took on that role to help again, like develop more the APAC side of community based around LinkedIn. And that is strictly voluntary. It's regulated by LinkedIn, but it's strictly voluntary. We're not employees of LinkedIn. We are volunteers of the community, and we really encourage people to connect, especially because of their love for LinkedIn, but also to do more on LinkedIn.
And is that online, or is before COVID, was it in person? Was it like networking events where people would actually come together and meet?
Correct. Yeah, it was all in-person events, mixers. We had a particular structure, Julian and I, and people can run their communities how they want, but we had a very particular structure where we had networking as people arrived, and then we had a guest speaker who specialized in something like a very particular topic and tried to relate it as well to LinkedIn. And then Q&A time, of course, and then after like a dinner or a light dinner and mix and mingle and network. So those are the things that we were doing. We did have one event this year. We had a private brunch. So we limited this time the tickets because usually we had anywhere from 80 to 100 people at each event last year.
Wow.
This time we only took about 50, completely sold out. We had a nice brunch and we had 4 speakers who spoke for 10 minutes each on a particular niche, but especially related to like business recovery in a post-COVID Asian economy, at least.
And is that a way that you encourage people to get to know the person behind the profile? And why is it important to do it, do you think?
Definitely. I think so many people these days, like we can get really comfortable and stay only online too often. And especially with professionals, like LinkedIn creates its own kind of boundaries. It creates its own kind of self-regulation because it is the most professional social media platform. So I think in that there's a lot more opportunity than meeting somebody from another social media platform you're connected to. I think there's so much depth to people beyond just who they are as a professional. But why not start with a professional online platform, which is a great way to present yourself, and then go offline and start creating connections locally, seeing who you can help, seeing who can help you, seeing if there's a new friend to be made, etc. There's so much around us locally, especially in Shanghai. It's a city of like anywhere between 24 and 26 million. So I think it's really important to create local in-person connections.
And there's got to be quite a difference between the way we connect online and the way we connect in person, isn't there? Even sitting talking to you now, we're on Zoom, we're online. There would be a different feel or a different energy if we were face to face in the room.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's value in taking that connection further, isn't it, that you already have online if you can?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me what thought leadership in a noisy market means.
So everyone wants to be somebody. Everyone wants their, what do they say? Like their 15 minutes of fame.
Yeah, Andy Warhol said that.
Yeah, and social media is creating everyone's 15 seconds of fame. And that's why we get into this struggle of vanity metrics and creating too much dopamine in our brain, getting addicted to social media, finding validation from social media. Thought leadership is different. Thought leadership is, yes, of course, you want to be well known. However, the main purpose is to establish yourself as an expert in your industry, in your niche, so that you can educate and influence an audience. When we highlight our expertise and we're giving a lot of value, then people feel more of a connection than, let's say, just some logo on a company page telling you what to do. But if it's a person and they're telling their story, they're giving their experience, they're sharing different things that they've been through that made them successful, and people start to respond to that, then that is real, true thought leadership, giving value and showing that that person's an expert and that you can trust them for what they're talking about.
Wow, that makes sense. That's very interesting. So Tamar, can you tell me what qualities and skills do you need or do you have to be a great COO?
I'm super detail oriented. And sometimes to a fault, I can get down into the weeds. That's why I have Julian. He's more of a bird's eye view kind of guy. So again, it's a great compliment. I'm very, very patient. I'm pretty calm most of the time and pretty rational and pragmatic about things. But also, I'm not scared to trust my gut. I can really read people very well. Since I was a child, I've always been kind of stepping back a bit and observing people. I can really read people well. Sometimes it scares me how well I can read them because I can really not manipulate people, but I can really deeply influence people just through the power of my words because I understand their psychology. So I think for someone who's really overseen the big operations and especially the client facing part, that I take care of. I think those kind of things are super important to know how to talk to people, how to be diplomatic, how to look at the details and customize things and find the right balance between wanting to please the customer, like delivering well, but at the same time, not compromising with how things work on your side. Both Julian and I have that philosophy. Like, we don't compromise. We used to in the beginning, and it got us in a lot of trouble and nightmares sometimes. But yeah, like we both as well, like we don't compromise. And I think that's a great way to run a business. And especially when you're growing and scaling like we are, those are like some really imperative things that you need to have to be successful.
It gives you a strong foundation, doesn't it, to build on? Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And what are you most proud of in your career?
Oh, I'm proud of many things. That's a tough question. I'm proud of myself the most for always taking risks. Even as a child, my parents called me a daredevil. They called me the little daredevil. I grew up learning how to ski when I was age 4. Coming from California, we would go north every winter and go skiing and have the snow and all this stuff. And my grandparents were avid skiers. They took me and oh my God, my grandma was incredible. She always beat me.
Go granny.
Yeah. But because of that, and because my family, they educated me so that I could overcome my fears. So once I knew how I could control my body, even as a child skiing, I wasn't scared of it anymore. So then I would take risks. I would do like little jumps and twists and all kinds of stuff. And my parents were like, oh my God, like, don't hurt yourself. And I never did because I had the confidence that I knew where I was going to land. I knew what I was doing. And I definitely applied that like to my life growing up. And especially like as a young woman and now as an older woman, like well into my mid 30s, I've always taken risks and I've said yes to a lot of opportunities. And it's opened some really interesting doors to help me get to learn myself better. But again, to bring me to this particular point of not compromising anymore. So I'll take a risk as long as it's not compromising what I stand for and what I want to achieve.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That was so inspirational. That's really brilliant. I'm sure my listeners are going to get shivers listening to that. That was so cool.
Thank you.
And Tamar, what's been the greatest challenge that you've faced in your career?
Again, you know what? It goes along with compromise. I think that the greatest challenges happen when we compromise, when we are not integral with ourselves, we're not integral with our cohorts, we're not integral with our clients, we're not integral even to our goals, we're not accountable. When you compromise, you're not accountable anymore, and seriously, all hell can break loose. So those are some tough lessons to learn, and they're challenging. However, I really believe everyone needs to go through that. When I was teaching 15 years ago, I would tell my students that too. I would say, like, you know what? If you want to be successful, you have to be accountable. And it's always first to yourself. Once you can understand that, you're going to overcome so many challenges or even start to avoid them. But for sure, wow, Jules, like when I compromised, those were some of the worst times in my career.
Because you're not really following your gut and your instincts, are you? You're being persuaded to go off track and it doesn't pay dividends. So I think that's a really great piece of advice that I've also learnt as I have gotten older as well. And I think as girl bosses, that's what we have to do. You've got to stick to your gun.
Yeah, I mean, if you compromise, what you're saying essentially is, I'm giving others permission to run my day or to run my life.
Yeah, not validating you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
But you have to be in control, and to really totally be in control of your life, of your career, of your destiny, you cannot compromise. And that's just the bottom line.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. And now you said you were super fearless as a kid and that you've carried that through into your adult life. But is there anything that you do fear?
Yes, 2 things: boredom and spiders.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love it.
That's it.
I grew up in the country in Australia, so I was surrounded by spiders, so I don't fear them at all.
I can't imagine. I don't know how you did that.
I had a friend actually who had a fear of spiders, and I had to run around to her house and help her with a spider in her stairwell.
Oh my God.
She couldn't get into her house. So yeah, I'm the spider wrangler.
You're amazing.
Yeah, thanks. And Tamar, what are your hopes for the future for yourself and your career?
So my greatest hope is to influence 13% of the world, and that's about 1 billion people. If you can influence 13% of the world, you can literally change the world. That sounds pretty big and obscure, but my vision for humanity is very, very big. I'm not ready to completely share it yet. However, I really want to shake up history, and I really want to help people, help humanity become the best versions of themselves, because I know that we can do better, and we're a world filled with compromise, and that needs to change.
Absolutely. And you're the generation, and the students of today are the generation that are going to be the change makers.
Right.
For sure. Absolutely. That's so cool. Do you have any regrets in your life?
No. Everything that I've done has shaped who I am today, and I'm proud of who I am. I like who I am. I love who I am. So I have no regrets.
Oh, that's amazing. Tamar, how can people connect with you if they'd like to learn more about Genius and Cell Agency and LinkedIn, or if they just want to catch up because you're amazing?
Thank you. Yeah, they just can find me on my favorite social media platform, LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes so people can connect with you. So Tamar, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's been such an insightful and fantastic interview, and I've really, really enjoyed meeting you, and I wish that we could connect in person, but we're in different...
Yeah, well, maybe someday soon.
Yeah, maybe one day for sure. So thank you so much for coming on Hong Kong Confidential and for sharing your wisdom. And I know that my listeners are going to get so much out of this interview. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jules.
For my listeners out there, if you could please go to iTunes to rate and review us, that would be amazing. It will help Hong Kong Confidential go up the charts, and it will also help people find Tamar and her company, Genius and Cell. And if you'd like to sponsor me on Patreon, then you can go to patreon.com/Hong Kong Confidential. And for as little as $1 a month, you can sponsor me. So that would be amazing. So thanks again, Tamar. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Confidants. I want to tell you about my Patreon page. I've joined Patreon in the hope of getting sponsorship for my Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Patreon is a great way for my listeners to get on board and sponsor me with monthly payments, and that goes towards my production costs and rewards for my members. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon page, please go to patreon.com and search up Jules Hannaford or Hong Kong Confidential. I would really appreciate you visiting my page. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.